We are Team 8 and we will present WH questions. So the following contents are the introduction, form, meaning, use, and lastly review. Let's start with the introduction. The introduction are the following. WH questions are essential constructions to learn. Firstly, they are used to request specific information, so the need to use them arises often. While yes and no questions query an entire duty, WH questions are used when the speaker is missing a specific piece of information, but the missing information can warrant more than a simple reply. Secondly, this is presumably due to their variety and to the fact that English has two basic structures for WH questions, one requiring inversion and one not. Let's go with the following form. Subject WH questions versus predicate WH questions. Let's compare them. For example, an example of subject WH questions is, who wrote a memo to his boss before he quit? This example is straightforward since it is a subject that is being queried and since the subject is already in the initial position in a sentence. No syntactic operations need to take place. An example of predicate WH question is, what did Lee write to his boss before he quit? It is the object NP that is being queried. We see that the information gap is in the predicate. Thus, the WH question word is not in the sentence initial position that it normally occupies in English. In order to deal with this matter, we will have to move the WH question word to the front of the sentence. For example, in the subject WH question, the former only needs to choose the appropriate WH question words. The latter includes prefacing the WH word from where the information gap occurs and adding the operator do if no other operator is available. Now let's talk about special cases involving WH fronting. First, if a determiner or an adverb intensifier is the focus of a WH question word, the constituent it modifies must be moved to the front of the string. For example, whose boss did Lee write the memo to? Secondly, two constituents must also be moved to the front when it is an adverb intensifier that is being queried. For example, how diligently had Lee worked at the firm? Let's keep talking about special cases involving WH fronting. Thirdly, another special case exists when the object of the preposition is the unknown element. When a WH fronting is applied, the preposition may either be left behind or be moved to the front of the string along with the NP linguistical despite piping. For example, to whom did Lee write an angry memo before he quit with pipe piping? Whom did Lee write an angry memo to before he quit? Fourth, we occasionally encounter a WH question where the question word is the object of a preposition within another prepositional phrase. For example, by virtue of what authority did Lee do that? Now, let's talk about WH questions with a copula be. For example, what is that object? There is no need for do support here, for we know that the copula be can serve as an operator. But we think at first that the subject NP is being questioned. So let's look at the following two prepositions. A. That object is a stethoscope. B. A stethoscope is that object. Of course, the answer is A. The point is that one must always fully reconstruct the underlying proposition when analyzing the form and meaning of a WH question. Now let's look at the third meaning of WH questions. Choosing a WH question, uninverted WH questions, empathetic questions with dash ever, and negative WH questions. For example, choosing a WH question would go like the following. Subject NP plus human goes to who, and then it formulates to who did it. Another example, object NP plus human goes to whom, and then goes to whom did you tell? These questions of uninverted WH questions do not require WH fronting and subject operator inversion. Sometimes these are just echo questions, in which the listener is signaling to the speaker that he or she didn't hear a part of what was just said. Empathetic questions with dash ever, the English speakers use dash ever with WH question words to make them emphatic. Such express a variety of emotions. And the negative WH questions are the three facts we would like to say is that like a teacher realizing that she still has one paper in hand. 2, it can be used for a negative assertion. And 3, there are 2 acceptable forms of negative WH questions depending on whether not has been contracted. Lastly, let's talk about use. The WH question versus WH questions. The yes and no questions are questions that can be answered with either yes or no. Yes and no questions ask about a whole statement and check whether the statement is true or false. For example, did you go to the concert last night? Yeah. How was it? These questions that start with words like who, what, where, why, when, and how, WH questions ask for a specific part or details in a statement. For example, how was the concert? What concert? Let's see the social uses. 100% are formulaic WH questions, which are commonly used expressions, and 100% are truncated WH questions, subset of formulaic questions. These question fragments are used in informal conversations. Uninverted WH question uses. They are often seen as impolite or offensive because they imply a level of social familiarity that might not be there. Uninverted means that they don't follow the standard word order. Anecdotal evidence helps clarify the misunderstanding. For example of uninverted yes and no questions, instead of did you eat, which is the standard word order, it would be you ate, which is non-standard. Another example of uninverted WH questions is instead of what did you do, which is the standard word order, it would go you did what, which is a non-standard. Let's go to the following, which are elliptical questions. In very informal conversations, it is possible to encounter WH questions that have a deleted auxiliary. In informal conversations, redundant function words such as auxiliaries can be deleted because they are not necessary to understand the meaning of a sentence. For example, a complete sentence would be, "Are you going to Arthur's party?" An elliptic question would be, "You going to Arthur's party?" And the deleted auxiliary in this question is are. Let's see the uses for the answers to WH questions. The phrasal answers provide precise information being sought by the questioner. And the full clausal answers may indicate that the question is perceived as problematic in some way. Let's see the uses of who and whom. Who, WH question word that queries the subject. For example, who is coming to the party? Whom, WH question word that queries the object. Example, who did you invite? When a WH question is querying the object of a preposition, whom should be used like this. To whom did you give the gift? Which is the correct. To who did you give the gift? Which is incorrect. Lastly, let's see a review. The following contents were the introduction, the form where we talked about three main cases, the subject WH question versus predicate WH questions, special cases, and duplicate questions with the copula B. In the meaning, we saw uninverted WH questions and negative WH questions. And lastly, on the use, we saw yes and no questions versus WH questions. We saw the social uses. We saw the uninverted WH questions, elliptical questions, answers to WH questions, and the questions who and whom. In conclusion, for beginner ESL, EFL students, for intermediate students, and even for advanced students, it is important to know that nonverbal cues like body language and the context of a conversation also play a big role in understanding why certain types of questions are recognized as questions, even if they don't strictly follow the usual grammar rules. Thank you for your attention.